I'm streaming. Am I streaming?
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
I'm streaming.
Yep, you're streaming.
I'm streaming. All right, hey, this is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. I'm your host, Jeremy, coming to you from allpointstv.com. How's everybody doing today? We are streaming live on YouTube. We're also at allpointstv.com. John, where else can we find ourselves at?
Okay, you can go on YouTube, Facebook. We also have it up on, I don't know how many other people have, this is a very popular show, so this is probably all over people's Facebook page. So
right on
in there. And also on Comcast channel 17. It alternates too on Tuesday from 8:30 to 9:30. We have an hour slot, so it's in rotation there too.
Fantastic. So you can catch us on TV too. Well, hey, thanks for joining us today. It is a beautiful day in the beautiful city of Flint. Today is August 9th, and it's a warm one. But we're glad to be here at the studios. It's nice and cozy here in the studios. And I'm trying to remember. Sorry, I feel like I'm a point in a map. Is that accurate?
It's pretty accurate.
All right. Well, with everybody talking about, World War III, North Korea, Kim Jong-il, all this and that, I thought maybe I'll just put a little reminder up for this week's program to chill out, everybody, okay? You remember what happened last World War? Like 6 million people died. It was bad, right? So let's not rush into anything. Let's chill and send Kim Jong-il a fat one. Tell him to just chill the F out. You know what I'm saying? All right, so we'll see what's happening. We're going to talk about marijuana news on the program today. We're also going to talk about the Genesee County Compassion Club, let you guys know what's been happening down there, and just get you guys up to speed and up to par with everything. It's a beautiful world, and marijuana is becoming more available to everyone everywhere. So this is a good thing. Of course, we're going to talk about medical marijuana today. And the first thing I want to mention without further ado is we do have our soup kitchen coming up here for the Genesee County Compassion Club. It is coming up here at the end of the month, which is let me check my dates, the 25th. So it's last Friday of the month. And we had a good turnout last time. I believe we had 100 plus people down at the soup kitchen getting fed. It was a spectacular time, and you guys did a great job serving up some pizzas. You guys were like regular pizza populists down there. You know what I'm saying? The beep da bop da. So good job spinning some dough. I heard you guys made a mess of the kitchen, but as always, we leave the place better than we found it. So thank you guys. You did a great job. Thank you very much. And I know everybody down there really appreciated the food. It got ate up like mad. So good job. All right, get us to the next one though, all right? August 25th, it's a Friday. Let's dive into the news. I got some stuff I want to share with you today. Some interesting things are going on right now. Right here in Michigan, we've got a big push for legalization of marijuana. There's ballot signatures being collected all over the state, and it probably will be just a short amount of time before they make the announcement that you will be seeing this on your ballot in November. We're talking about legalized marijuana for adults 21 and older. You can possess it. They're going to legalize industrial hemp production. So this is a big deal. You want to make sure you definitely read the ballot language carefully. It's not going to be a free-for-all. It's definitely going to be some big business and so on, but that's to be expected with any growing industry. So I think the most important thing is that marijuana should never have been illegal. If anything, you should have made tobacco and alcohol illegal. But I'm not really into prohibiting substances. I don't think that's a wise thing to do. I think you'd be better off educating folks. But anyways, that's my opinion. Let's move on to the news, all right? We talk about what's going on here. One of the big concerns in Michigan, obviously, is buzzed driving. Buzzed driving is not acceptable on any level, and it goes in the same bucket as DUIs and reckless driving and so on. But what we need to decipher, what we need to figure out for ourselves is how do we actually manage this in today's day and age. With modern technology, everybody wants something to be verified. They want it to be backed up, and an officer's word or assessment of the situation just isn't as reliable as we would like it to be, and it is not always just matter of fact. Sometimes it's subjective. So we're trying to eliminate those things out of the process and really come up with a scientific way of measuring whether someone is too high to drive. And there's an interesting article. I want to share it with you guys. It was on NPR, National Public Radio, and we're talking about specifically marijuana and DUIs. How do we do this? How do we manage this? And so on. One of the nice things is they did go straight to Colorado, and they said, well, let's go to the place that's already having it done. It's already legalized there. What's that state doing? And here's what's up with Colorado. Currently, right now, their limit for whether or not you're intoxicated with marijuana is 5 nanograms per liter of blood. So we have an established level, if you will. That's what they've picked. Where that came from, I really couldn't tell you. I think it is subjective, but that is the level nonetheless. So if you get tested and you're 6 or 7 nanograms per liter of blood, you're over the limit. You're going to be getting a DUI in Colorado. You're going to be considered a hazard on the roads. Your insurance is going to go up. If you keep doing it, you're probably going to be looking at jail time, and you're going to be treated as a regular, common, everyday criminal. The question is whether or not that person is actually truly impaired and unable to operate safely a motorized vehicle. And I think this is where we really need to dive into the bones and find out exactly what should the standard be. Colorado's gone with 5 nanograms. Should other states follow? Is that worked out well? This is some of the things that they're discussing. So let me try to pull this up here for you. One of the things that I wanted to point out is they did several tests. There's a company right now in Colorado that is doing extensive testing on subjects, people that don't use marijuana and then did, people who use marijuana regularly throughout the day, regular users, and they're testing their driving capabilities, and they're coming up with some interesting results. And of course, then they're backing that up with their actual research to see, what was the amount of THC nanograms in this person, how did they react, so on and so forth. And the interesting thing is that the test is not foolproof. The test actually has quite a bit of error, or quite a large margin of error, if you will, and it is certainly anything but foolproof. And I think that's what our legislators here in Michigan need to understand, and they need to take a look at. Here's an example. Some of the people that they tested that were regular cannabis consumers performed a driving test amazingly well directly after using cannabis, smoking it specifically. So these folks, they use cannabis regularly, they used it again, and then they got right in the car, started driving, and they passed their driving test, A+, no problem at all. They had other folks there that had not used cannabis, don't use cannabis, and it's not a regular part of their life. They used it prior to the driving test and failed horribly. So ideally, really, these people have the same amount that they consumed prior to the test and ended with completely different results. The blood test also ended with different results as well, further muddying the water, if you will. So here's some of the interesting things they came up with. Some of those folks that had been regular cannabis consumers, consumed and passed the test, when they were testing their blood levels for THC and the nanogram levels, some of them found to show above the 5 nanogram limit up to 5 days after using cannabis. So what you're seeing is that the cannabis, the THC, which is stored in your fat versus other areas of your body like alcohol and cocaine and stuff, THC is different. It gets stored in your fat and it gets held on to differently until your body metabolizes it out of your system. So there's a different mechanism going on here, one that we have to understand, and it shows that some folks are able to get, if you will, stores of THC in their fat cells, and it takes longer for them to sort of dilute that out of their body, for their body to metabolize it, to eat it up, if you will. So here you got somebody who passes their driving test, A+, they clearly consumed cannabis right before getting in the car, and they're over the limit, but yet they're performing better than the person who doesn't use cannabis and then did. They're also performing at the same level of someone who didn't use cannabis at all, who is not impaired whatsoever. Further evidence to make my point here is that some of those folks that were not cannabis users and did fail their driving test showed a negative on their blood test. So here's what we have is someone who just consumed cannabis, maybe a first-time consumer, let's leave it at that, and it didn't even have time to get into their fat cells. So when they went and tested their blood and they go to the fat cells, there's nothing there. However, yet they were clearly impaired behind the wheel. That's why they failed their test. So I think it goes to show that this nanogram blood testing method is not really a good method of determining whether someone has the ability to operate a vehicle. I think what we have to do is find another scientific method, which is that company's working on, the one out in Colorado that I mentioned, or maybe a different type of a test. So let me pull up some of this information here. It's coming up finally now. My computer's a little slow today, so you have to bear with me. I'm trying to find the name of this company. Cannabix Technologies, Hound Labs, two different places that are working on developing breath detection devices. And obviously that's a different type of device than testing what's in your blood. And their research is showing that what is in the blood, it's an incomplete and an indirect inkling of what's happening in the brain, which is obviously that's what we're trying to figure out. What's going on in this person's head? So I think this is a great article. I would recommend you read it, share it. If you're going to be talking to maybe one of your local legislators at the state level, I know that right now they're working on developing rules, and they need to see this kind of stuff here, because we're going to end up as a state spending a whole lot of money on something that doesn't work and that provides false criminal evidence towards people, whether it be someone being incriminated when in fact they should be innocent, or letting someone go when they in fact should be prosecuted. We've come up to a level that I think most people agree on for DUIs and dealing with alcohol. I think that the majority of society, we can argue on whether or not we feel the laws are too harsh or not harsh enough, but most of us don't really have a dispute on the actual testing method. We feel, I think the majority of us, John, would you agree that a blood alcohol test, whether it be done on the side of the road or at the hospital, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of reason to refute that type of test.
No, another thing is too, look at the scrutiny they're putting marijuana to, and then all the prescription drugs people are having prescribed. You don't see, by their doctors for things they necessarily may need them for, but they don't. It seems like they don't test the, the reaction time and driving ability and all these other, other serious drugs.
Yeah, well, you're bringing up a great point, John, because you're absolutely right. When we compare other pharmaceutical-based drugs that are given out by the doctor, the majority of those drugs come with precautionary announcements, whatever little writing on their bottle that the patient takes home with them. It simply says, hey, don't operate this until you understand the effects of the medication, or some say just don't operate anything. So there's a certain recommendation that comes from the manufacturer telling that patient, that consumer, what to expect, what to do, so on and so forth. There's no reason that marijuana can't be any different. And in fact, I would argue that it has already been done. You can get prescription Marinol, which is THC only, which is apparently what we're concerned about when it comes to operating a motor vehicle. On that THC Marinol prescription, it says right on the side of it, don't operate until you understand the effects of the medication and can do so without feeling impaired. Obviously, it's not exact language, but it doesn't say you're not allowed to operate a car anymore. Okay? So I think there's a fine line here, and it's something that needs to be recognized. Why are we treating this differently? Why are we trying to create a whole new category of revenue, really, is what's going on. Why are we doing that when there's already predestined, used, verifiable methods for dealing with prescription medication, which is what this is comparable to? Why? Why? And I understand that we're moving into a recreational market, so we're taking it out of the medicinal part of the deal, but even so, we need to look at actual evidence and not just try to come up with a standard that everybody can pat their back on and go, yay, we got a standard, must be good because we got a standard. Well, we wouldn't have a standard if it wasn't good. Well, what if the standard is wrong?
I would suggest you have far more dangerous than people driving around looking at their text or their phones, or the cops driving around looking at their laptops mounted on their desktop.
Well, and sure, and we just had recent legislation addressing that. It is a problem. People understand that. We're having clampdowns all over the state, really all over the country, to curb distracted driving, if you will. Which is good. I hate it when I see people driving down the road with their cell phone. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a way to take care of that, a way that makes sense, a way that the public agrees. This here, we're not even backing this up with science, and yet we're saying, yeah, let's go ahead and use it. That makes no sense. All right. All right, well, that's what I want to share with you. Please check out the article. It's something that you can easily share, like I said, with your legislators, with your friends, your family, when you get into talking about this debate. You know, because it's going to come up as we get closer and closer to the ballot when it goes down here this next year, and everybody's talking about, well, what do we do with all these buzzed drivers? You know, certainly we need to be concerned about it. It is an area of concern that needs to be addressed. However, we need to be careful about how we address those areas of concern, and so that we're not creating more areas of concern, right? All right, moving on here. Check that out, NPR. You can simply type in marijuana DUI. It comes right up. It's really easy on Google. All right. Next article. This one I thought was really interesting, and it kind of debunked a few things for myself. And it's not so much about, you know, politics or laws or anything. It's just about marijuana. And I thought this was cool. This is from marijuana.com. Check it out. And it's titled, What Happens to Marijuana After 5 Years? Now, before I get into the article, I want to sort of summarize what I personally thought happens to marijuana after 5 years. And what I had been told is not accurate. All right. So I might have shared information in the past that was inaccurate, and I do apologize. This here is actually tested, verified, so I like what I'm seeing in this article. It looks good. What I thought happened to marijuana in 5 years is just a continual degradation, a continual carboxylation of the plant matter, which would obviously result in a lowered amount of cannabinoids and also lowered amount of available terpenes. That would be my summary and synopsis. I mean, that is in short what I thought happened to weed. Even when it's stored, obviously, if it's not stored in an ideal condition, you can guarantee those things are going to occur. But if it is stored correctly, meaning airtight, in a temperature, so somewhere around 70 degrees, 60 to 70 degrees, and also without having any light on it. So it's got to be stored in the dark as well. So all things being considered, if it's stored properly, I thought that over time it would continue to degrade. And this article proves me wrong, and it also offers evidence as to what does happen. So I thought this was really cool. They took cannabis, they had it stored properly, just in the fashion that I just mentioned, pulled it out 5 years later, and they had tested it before they put it into storage and tested it again after storage. And here's the results. You can check them out for yourself. I thought it was really interesting. The THC really didn't go anywhere. So first of all, it did not degrade the way that I thought it would. In fact, let me pull this up here. I'm here. Bear with me. Okay, cut to the chase here. It says when THC is exposed to oxygen, it transforms into CBN, which is good stuff. In this case, the buds were stored in mason jars, so exposure to oxygen was minimal, and the high amount of THC that still remained in the bud made it obvious that there was very little degradation of THC to CBN. However, there was still a higher presence of CBN than average. 0.6% to be exact. The slight dose of CBN may have induced relaxing and a sedative effect, blah, 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 blah. It says here, so really you had a little bit of decarboxylation going on, but very minimal, very minimal. And really overall you didn't lose any potency. It just sort of converted from THC to the CBN like they mentioned. Again, this was stored in a mason jar, airtight, so it didn't have, you know, exposure to oxygen, but yet, you know, there was still a little bit in the jar, of course, so a little bit did happen. But overall, the cannabinoids that were that were verified there when it was put into storage were also still there when it was taken out of storage. So it's kind of cool. Appearance. Sometimes you will see a little bit more discoloration. It says here, not surprisingly, the original lime green hue had gradually become a bit duller, fading towards a more khaki green. It said here, however, the trichomes, however, were very much still intact, and their heads continued to glow, so they didn't break down. It says here, as far as consistency goes, The super sticky buds had transformed into a slightly crunchier version of their original selves, so it did dry out a little bit. It said it was a little bit drier than what most smokers prefer, but when you viewed it up close, you could see it was still a quality product. All right, last thing to talk about is the terpenes, which is where the scent comes from. It says here, almost any expert will tell you the first thing to degrade are the terpenes of cannabis. However, they were surprised that even after 5 years, the plant still had an amazing amount of terpenes. It said here, cracking open a bud exuded a more pleasant floral citrus scent. Lab tests showed that 0.67% of terpenes remained intact, with limonene leading the way at 1.66 milligrams per gram. The buds are also high in linalool and mercerine. So, really, it's pretty good. Not much of a degradation. Again, 67% of the terpenes remained intact. So, a little bit more degradation of the terpenes than the cannabinoids over the 5-year storage period, but not a whole lot. And that's pretty good for 5 years of storage. So if you happen to find an old bud back in the cupboard and it's been stored properly, don't just throw it out. Might still be good. But I thought that was neat. I've been told that in the past, THC degrades a certain percentage over a period of time, and it was rather rapid. Especially in a 5-year period, you'd be left with almost nothing on any plant, according to what previous information was out there. That proves it differently. That's complete opposite of what we've been told in the past. So you can store your weed. That's a good thing. Just remember, it's got to be dark, temperate, and oxygen sealed. Okay? All right. A couple more things I want to share with you guys. Let's move on to Nevada. You guys aware that Nevada now has recreational marijuana, medical marijuana? I thought it was interesting. They're getting the ball rolling out in Nevada, and it's rolling good. They have heavy sales out there. But most of you, at least, probably have some sort of familiarization with Nevada, realizing that the majority of the state is desert, with the exception of a few places. But I wanted to point this out. 39 of the state's 44 licensed dispensaries are in Las Vegas. 39 of 44. So, Sin City, definitely not letting you down there.
Pretty saturated, huh?
Yeah. All right. Okay, next state, Hawaii. Hawaii, they just opened their first medical marijuana dispensary. So, congratulations to Hawaii. I don't know what island it's on. I don't know enough about Hawaii to really care, but I think it's cool that people finally have access to medical marijuana there. I know Hawaii's been growing beautiful marijuana for years, probably longer than most places, probably hundreds of years. I've heard about some of the most beautiful colas ever have been grown in Hawaii. I don't doubt it. It's got an incredible growing environment, and now hopefully these guys can take advantage of it legally.
Hey, can you rate to field a pop question? Unfair, but what strain seems to be the most widely distributed of the marijuana, or the cannabis plants?
That's a good question, John. I don't know if you could narrow it down to one strain or not. That's probably something you'd have to maybe take a little survey on out in Colorado, and maybe start with your legalized states.
I know that's like in Europe and stuff. From the Middle East to Europe, there's naturally occurring plants. I don't know. I guess that was its way here in the United States.
Oh, sure, all over the world.
So I mean, but it would seem like maybe they got there somewhere. But animal transport, like accidental, just like any other seed.
Yeah.
Fish eggs will sit on the
the legs. Well, and nowadays, really, it's more of a. I almost consider it like a designer weed, if you will, where these strains have been specifically selected, bred to exhibit certain characteristics, whether it be the type of cannabinoids that are in them or the type of flavor that they exude. So yeah, I mean, I think that we're in a designer age where people are being very specific about what they're looking for. I think it's funny, back in the old days, John, a lot of people said, well, what's your favorite? I said, red-haired Sensimelia. Well, that just simply means a plant that's got red hairs on it and doesn't have seed. So that's a pretty general statement for saying, yeah, I really like this kind of weed. It's kind of like saying, what's your favorite pop? And you say cola. Well, what kind of cola? Okay, so now you're getting into the designer age, and people are really starting to understand and know cannabis by name. So there are certain strains out there that are incredibly popular. I mean, Kush has had worldwide recognition. It's been rapped about by countless different artists and sang about. I mean, but there's all different kinds of Kush. It's kind of like, again, saying the word cola.
Well, it's like, I wonder too, though, like, is a traceable heirloom plant? You know, the plants or the seeds that they could say that actually was the original stock. The rest of them were bred from. Do they have,
sure, but I don't know if anybody still has that today, or if you could still go and find that same plant growing out in the wild, untouched, unfettered. You know what I mean? Obviously, for those of you who don't know, Kush comes from the Hindu Kush region, which would have been like, you know, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tibet, you know, that whole mountain range there. It's actually called the Hindu Kush mountain range. So the marijuana was named where, you know, after where it came from. It wasn't just, oh, what's that remind you of? Kush. Yeah, you know, has a reason. So, but again, you know, designer weed now, you know, there are very popular strains. I can think Gorilla Glue has been, you know, one of the more popular ones that you see a lot of places. Tangy is one of the real popular ones you're seeing now. There's a Skittles strain that everybody's raving about. So you get different things that become popular, and you know, friends hear about it, and so they want to try it. Now this strain gains notoriety. But you know, I think that's going to continue to grow. And I think it's one of those things that's going to almost like trends, you know, like fashion trends. You know, everybody this year wears blue and next year it'll be red. I think you're going to have the same thing with cannabis, because people are always trying out the new things. You see that with beer. You see that with wine. So I don't think you'd see anything different here in this industry either. All right, moving on here. I wanted to talk about a couple things. One of them was Senator Cory Booker. This guy here is stepping up, and he introduced legislation at the federal level to end the scheduling of marijuana, along with a whole host of other things that desperately need to be done in regards to the medical and recreational marijuana industries. So if you have time, please look up Senator Cory Booker and check out his proposal. This is something that you could call your Senator Stabenow on. You could call one of your representatives on at the federal level and say, hey, look, you know, this is something that needs to be done. So we've had a lot of bills get introduced at the federal level regarding marijuana. This is really a very good, complete bill, and it is gaining some steam. You can check it out on social media. It's becoming popular. So maybe this one could actually get some traction if we can start getting some support from it from the public sector. So check out Senator Cory Booker and what he's proposing. It's like I said, it's descheduling of marijuana. It's allowing for the regulation to be done. It's allowing for states to proceed. It's allowing for banks to participate. It's sort of opening up the floodgates, if you will, and allowing this to become legitimized at the federal level. So it's an excellent package. Please check it out. Please support if you can. Quickly, CBD shop was opened up in the UK. For those of you that don't know, marijuana is illegal in the UK. However, now it seems that they're sort of letting the CBD side of things slide by. So kudos for them, and kudos to the patients that can get that relief now that they're looking for. So that's pretty cool. All right. See, one other thing here I wanted to bring up with you guys. If I can remember what it was. Oh yeah, Ohio. Do we talk about Ohio yet?
I don't think you have, no.
No, I don't think I have. Ohio, now I've brought this up on the show quite a few times before. Ohio just made their medical marijuana program they're available this last year. Now they're getting the ball rolling. They're taking applications, and they just set and rolled out their rules for the state's medical marijuana program in Ohio. So I wanted to go through this with you guys, not in great detail, but at least let you know a little bit about it. First thing I'd tell you is don't pack your bags and move to Ohio. You're not going to get in the biz unless you know somebody who's really wealthy. So enjoy Michigan, okay? But here we go. Ohio is taking applications for 24 grow licenses. So far they've reviewed over 185. Realize they are only going to approve 24 grow licenses. So very, very limited amount of production here in Ohio. The law established a framework that established a 21 qualifying medical conditions list. and they got basically 2 years to get this entire thing rolled out, but they're moving along. The law does not allow smoking marijuana or growing it at home. So, okay. Let's see here. Let's move on down. Patients will be registered by physicians. They'll pay a $50 annual registration fee. 50% discounts for veterans and people who receive federal disability assistance. Patients can only possess a 90-day supply of medical marijuana at any one time. The pharmacy board increased the amount from 6 ounces to 8 ounces of marijuana containing the equivalent amount of THC. Blah, 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 blah. Ohio is the first of 29 states that has legalized medical marijuana to calculate limits this way. It says here, patients could mix and match products, but each amount added together cannot exceed a total 90-day supply. So if a patient bought 70 days worth of plant material, he or she could not buy more than 20 days worth of vaping oils or edibles. It says here, patients can dedicate up to 2 caregivers to buy medical marijuana on their behalf. Caregivers can serve up to 2 patients, except in hospice and other situations allowed by the pharmacy board. Caregivers pay a $25 fee. Okay, let's move on here to processors and dispensaries. All right, so now notice there wasn't anything there for caregivers growing marijuana. That was not what they're allowed to do. They're just simply allowed to go buy it for their patient. All right, so the Commerce Department will license up to 40 processors to make marijuana oils, patches, lotions, capsules, and edibles. Processors will pay a $10,000 application fee, and if awarded a license, a $90,000 fee, renewable each year for $100,000. The state will license up to 60 dispensaries statewide. The pharmacy board last week released a draft plan to distribute those licenses by population. Shows that many rural and suburban counties would not have one dispensary. Dispensary applicants have to pay a $5,000 application fee and a $70,000 license fee every other year. The state can license additional processors and dispensaries after September 8th, 2018 if they need to meet patient demand. Then it goes into regular zoning, blah, 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 stuff like this. Background checks, financial plans, operational plans, blah, 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 in order to make a application. It says here, Ohio physicians will have to take 2 hours of continuing education courses and register with the state medical board in order to recommend marijuana to patients. Doctors are required to explain the benefits and risks of medical marijuana to patients before issuing a recommendation. So there you have it, folks. That's what's up in Ohio. So if you want to be a processor or a grower, $100,000 a year, and good luck getting approved since it's a very limited amount, only 40 of them. And dispensaries, same thing there. $75,000 every other year, basically, and up to 60 statewide. So obviously very limited, only 60 dispensaries statewide.
That's good. That's guaranteed just to benefit the politicians who are probably going to pad their own pockets largely with that money coming in.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, you
don't think they're going to give that money back?
I don't think they ever do. I mean, it's like they got their retirement fund to think about.
Well, John, you bring up a good point. One of the things in the Colorado law when it talks about retaining the excise fee for marijuana, the sales tax fees, the licensing fees, and so on, is that it is doled out by the state where that money's going to go. And it was written that way in their legislation. So they can't change it. You have to do it that way. The money that comes from the marijuana in that state has to go to those things. I don't see that in Ohio. Okay, I don't see that in Ohio. And I think I do see that in the Michigan ballot. That's something you want to check out.
Years ago when they started the lottery here in Michigan, the money was supposed to go to education, to schools.
Yeah, and our schools are in shambles, and yet our lotteries just keep getting bigger, and there's more of them, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I mean, that's and just because they say it's going to, don't necessarily take their word for it.
You got a point there, John, but at least it's nice to see if it is put forth in writing. I think that's a start. Whereas I don't see that in Ohio. It definitely seems to be a fat cat game, certainly with the licensing fees and the requirements and so on. Ohio can do things the way they want, but I think that Ohio voters spoke pretty clearly when they turned down their measure here, was it almost 2 years ago? and it was a very similar program to what they're getting right now. But the voters said no because they didn't want it to be a monopoly setup, but yet their state legislators decided, well, it's going to be that way, too bad. If you want marijuana, then this is how you're going to get it. And that's how they're going to get it. So that's how it is. I mean, if you don't stand up and say something, they'll roll over you. And that's what happened in Ohio. So, Ohio, you suck. Well, I gotta say, Ohio sucks. Ohio sucks. Buckeyes suck, specifically. All right. So that's what's up. I just want to share that news with you guys. There's lots of stuff going on, obviously. Keep your eyes and ears peeled. We did have a couple different incidents happen here in Genesee County, but actually I'm not even going to call them incidents because it was more of mishaps. There was a couple places that were mentioned, through word of mouth, I think on MLive as well, saying that they were in Genesee County, a couple marijuana dispensaries, if you will, compassion clubs, whatever they were, raided in Genesee County, and that is not the case. There were no medical marijuana raids in Genesee County this last week. There was false information. The paper pulled the article. It was a misspoke, if you will. So nothing happened. The only pressure that we're seeing right now is still up in Gaylord, Cloud 45 dispensary, Chad Morrow, and those guys up there. 5 different places that were raided, I think about 2 weeks ago. We covered it on the program here. And there is still a battle going on. They recently submitted a complaint to the Michigan State Police Department, and the Michigan State Police Department sort of just brushed it off and gave reasons for doing so. So it's an ugly battle up there. I definitely hope those people can find medication, and those people that are looking for it. I hope that the people that are involved in the incidents can find peace, because it's certainly a trying time, and it's an ugly situation. I mean, why are we going after people like this? It just makes no sense at all. So let's keep up the good fight, all right? Thanks for joining me this week, guys. I appreciate it. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Don't forget about the soup kitchen. Get down to the G3C. If you guys haven't tried out the Cuban egg rolls or the my personal favorite, the Angus bites, you are missing out. They're absolutely delicious. The food at the G is off the hook, and so are all the people there. So you guys rock. Thanks for making it happen. Catch us here next week at allpointstv.com. Make sure you check out all the other podcasts for other important information here in the city of Flint. John, thanks for being with me in the studio. I appreciate it. We'll catch you here next week. I'm Jeremy. You guys have a great week. Thank you.